Blue and red lights suddenly appeared in Marcus Reed's rearview mirror as he drove his modest hybrid sedan through a quiet federal district in Washington, D.C. He sighed, eased off the gas, and pulled to the curb. He had just finished a long morning at the office and wore simple jeans and a gray hoodie, a look that made him blend in everywhere except places where appearances were everything. Marcus rolled down the window, hands placed clearly on the steering wheel. He had done this before. Too many times. The officer approached with the confidence of someone who believed authority was the same thing as superiority. His mirrored sunglasses reflected Marcus's calm face back at him in a distorted way. "License and registration," the officer demanded, his tone already sharp, as if Marcus had insulted him by existing. Marcus handed over his wallet and documents. The officer flipped through them carelessly, then gave Marcus a slow, incredulous once-over. What do you do for a living?" he asked, smirking as if he already knew the answer. "I work in government," Marcus said, keeping his voice level. The officer chuckled. "Government, huh? And what are you supposed to be? Janitor at a courthouse? Mailroom boy?" Marcus felt the familiar burn of being judged before being known. He kept his jaw tight but steady. "I'm a senior advisor," he answered. The officer scoffed and shook his head. "In that car? Wearing that sweatshirt? Don't insult my intelligence." He took a step back, folding his arms. "People like you don't get government jobs. People like you get watched." Marcus met his gaze, calm but unyielding. "If you have doubts, run my ID," he suggested. The officer leaned closer, voice low with disdain. "No, I think I'll do something better. Step out of the vehicle. Let's teach you not to lie to law enforcement." Marcus stepped out slowly, his dignity intact, even as the officer tried to strip it away. He knew the situation well, knew how quickly things could escalate when someone with power chose prejudice over reason. The officer didn't know yet, but very soon he would learn exactly who he decided to mess with. Officer Carter walked Marcus toward the front of the cruiser as if escorting a criminal rather than a citizen who had obeyed every command. Passing cars slowed as drivers stared, some even lowering their windows to watch the scene unfold. Marcus kept his head up, refusing to let embarrassment replace dignity. Carter circled him slowly, shaking his head with an exaggerated sigh. "You know what I think?" he said, voice thick with arrogance. "I think you're one of those guys who tries to act important. Probably cleans offices and pretends he works there." Marcus exhaled calmly, keeping his posture solid. "I told you the truth," he said. You just don't want to hear it." Carter scoffed and stepped closer, closing the gap between them. "Guys like you don't get to be anything more than what you look like. Look at you. Hoodie, cheap car. You think anyone is going to believe you're anything higher than a nobody?" The words struck, not because they were surprising, but because they were a script he'd heard too many times in life. Marcus refused to let them bruise him. "My job shouldn't matter here," Marcus replied. "You pulled me over. So check the documents. Run the ID." Carter snatched Marcus's wallet again, practically ripping it from his hands. He opened it to find the badge Marcus always carried, a federal DHS credential that would have shut this entire scene down instantly, if the officer bothered to look. Instead, Carter laughed. "This is fake. Real agents don't look like you." Marcus's patience stretched thin, but his voice remained steady. "You're making assumptions that could cost you your job." Carter jabbed a finger into Marcus's chest. "The only person who should be worried about their job here is you." He turned toward his patrol car and clicked his radio. "Dispatch, I've got a subject providing false federal ID. Running his information now." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, not in fear, but in readiness. He knew exactly what dispatch would tell him. He knew the hierarchy here, and he knew that in a matter of minutes, everything Officer Carter believed about him would fall apart. As Carter typed Marcus's information into his patrol computer, his smirk began to fade. He blinked, froze, then leaned closer to the screen. The muscles in his jaw twitched. His fingers hovered shakily over the keyboard as he reread the results. He turned back toward Marcus, expression no longer smug, no longer certain, just afraid. Because for the first time, Officer Carter realized he wasn't standing over someone beneath him. He was standing in front of someone who outranked him. And the power he thought he had? He was about to learn he never controlled it at all. Officer Carter's confidence evaporated the moment he saw the confirmation on his screen. His posture shifted, Shoulders dropped, the swagger drained from his stance like someone had punctured his ego and let all the air escape. Marcus watched the transformation quietly, knowing exactly what line the officer had just crossed. Carter stepped away from the computer and returned with stiff, awkward movements. Sir, he began, voice suddenly respectful but trembling at the edges. Would you mind waiting here a moment? Marcus crossed his arms, making the officer wait for a response. I'm already here, he said calmly. Carter swallowed hard and turned his back quickly, fumbling with his radio. Dispatch, get me the captain, immediately. His voice wasn't confident now. It was pleading. 1 minute ago, Marcus was just a problem the officer could push around. Now, he was a problem that could ruin Carter's career. While the officer paced, Marcus remained calm, breathing evenly, reclaiming every ounce of dignity that had been challenged. Cars drove by slower now, people recognizing this wasn't just a traffic stop anymore. It was a mistake unraveling in public. Carter finally returned, avoiding Marcus's gaze. His mouth opened, but his rehearsed arrogance didn't come out. Look, I may have acted too quickly, he stammered, scratching the back of his neck. Marcus met his eyes with steady focus. You tried to humiliate me, he said, each word a quiet truth. You assumed I didn't belong anywhere important. The officer's face reddened, not from authority this time, but embarrassment. He tried to recover, to regain some control of the narrative. Well, you weren't exactly dressed like... Marcus cut him off, voice low and powerful. Like someone who works in government? The officer flinched. Marcus leaned slightly closer. Respect shouldn't depend on what someone wears. Carter opened his mouth as if to argue, then closed it again. He had nothing left to justify himself. The radio crackled. Captain en route. ETA. 1 minute. Carter stiffened like he was preparing for execution. Marcus simply stepped aside, arms still crossed, standing taller than before. The tables had turned completely. The officer who mocked him was now terrified of him, and Marcus didn't need to raise his voice or his fists to make that happen. He let the truth and the officer's own choices do all the work. A second cruiser screeched to a stop behind the first, and the arriving officer stepped out with urgency in every movement. Captain Torres didn't hesitate. He headed straight toward Marcus, as if he already knew exactly who mattered here. Mr. Reed, he said quickly, voice respectful. Are you all right? Were you harmed? Marcus shook his head once, calm, controlled, completely aware that every eye in the street was now watching this reversal unfold. The captain turned slowly toward Officer Carter, his expression transforming into pure frost. Explain, he demanded. Carter stiffened like a soldier about to be court-martialed. Sir, I thought his ID was fake. He wasn't cooperating. He claimed to be... Torres cut him off with a raised hand. You thought, he echoed coldly. You assumed. Marcus folded his arms, letting silence emphasize everything he didn't need to say. Torres faced him again. We deeply apologize for this unacceptable treatment. If you choose to file a report, the department will take immediate action. Carter looked like the ground might swallow him. His face burned red, this time not with power, but the humiliation Marcus had been forced to wear minutes earlier. Marcus finally spoke, his tone even but sharp, like a blade coated in truth. I tried to tell him who I was. He laughed and called my credentials fake because of how I look. The captain's jaw locked. Mr. Reed is a senior advisor with the Department of Homeland Security, he said loudly, ensuring everyone, especially the recording phones, heard it. Whispers erupted. A few bystanders lowered their cameras, ashamed. Carter stared at Marcus, eyes wide with regret. Sir, He stopped, searching for a version of apology that might erase what he did. Marcus didn't offer him an escape. You didn't treat me with respect because you didn't think I deserved it. Torres nodded firmly. We will be handling this internally, he assured. Carter's head hung low. In less than 10 minutes, the officer who tried to remind Marcus of his place was now being reminded of the limits of his own authority. And Marcus? He had never once raised his voice. He didn't have to. The truth spoke loud enough. Captain Torres stepped in front of Marcus, positioning his own body as a shield, as if trying to physically block the humiliation that had already happened. His posture carried both urgency and remorse. "Mr. Reed," he said, voice lowered but firm, "someone with your position should never experience treatment like this. Not from anyone, least of all an officer sworn to protect citizens." The sincerity in his tone was undeniable. Torres was embarrassed, angry even, not at Marcus, but for him. Marcus didn't rush to respond. He stood silent, letting the weight of the moment settle. He had learned long ago that silence can be louder than shouting. And right now, every quiet second felt like Carter's shame sinking deeper into him. The captain turned his attention back toward Officer Carter, who looked like a child waiting outside the principal's office. Shoulders slumped, eyes darting anywhere but at the man he just belittled. Carter's hands fidgeted with his belt, fingers trembling, the swagger gone. The badge on his chest felt heavier now, burdened by the truth rather than powered by arrogance. "Do you understand who you just profiled?" Torres snapped, his voice filled with disappointment that cut deeper than any insult. "This man works directly with federal leadership. He oversees programs that coordinate with our department. He has the power to review our operations and report to people far above my rank." Carter's throat bobbed as he swallowed, panic flickering behind embarrassment. He had thought he held all the authority here, but now the hierarchy was exposed, and his ignorance stood front and center. I didn't know," Carter stuttered. It sounded like begging, not justification. "That," Marcus finally said, his voice calm but razor-sharp, "is the problem. You didn't know, and you didn't care." He stepped closer, not threatening, but towering in presence nonetheless. "You saw a black man in a hoodie driving a simple car, and that was all you needed to decide I was beneath you." Carter's eyes glistened with humiliation and the slightest hint of fear. His mouth opened, but no apology found its way out. Torres shook his head, disgust heavy in his eyes. "This department cannot afford officers who think like you do," he said. "Prejudice clouds judgment, and judgment is literally your job." Each word felt like a blow, and Carter visibly winced. Marcus crossed his arms, grounding himself. "I don't want special treatment," he said, voice steady as stone. "I want equal treatment, the kind you give people when you don't assume they're lying." A long silence followed. Cars still drove by, but their engines felt muted compared to the tension filling the street. Several neighbors stood on porches now, witnessing the downfall of the officer, who moments ago strutted like he owned the block. Torres cleared his throat. "Mr. Reed, if you would like, I can accompany you home or escort you to your destination, and I will personally make sure a formal investigation begins immediately." Marcus nodded once, appreciating the respect, but needing something more. He looked Carter directly in the eye. No anger, no raised tone, just truth sharp enough to pierce. "You tried to make me feel powerless," Marcus said quietly. "But respect is not something you decide someone deserves. It's something you should give by default, until they prove they don't deserve it." His words landed like judgment. Carter looked smaller than his uniform now. Not because Marcus diminished him, but because his own actions did. It was clear to everyone watching. The real authority here wasn't the man with the badge. It was the man who never let prejudice break his composure. Marcus stood tall, unshaken. He didn't need to prove his title. His character already had. Officer Carter stood frozen, the weight of his own choices settling heavily on his shoulders. The arrogance that once fueled him had burned out, leaving only the raw embarrassment of realizing he'd tried to degrade someone who could end his career with a single phone call. Captain Torres folded his arms, jaw clenched, waiting for the inevitable next step. Marcus didn't rush him. He simply waited, steady, composed, in full control of his own dignity. "Officer Carter," Torres said, voice stern as a verdict being delivered, "you will apologize to Mr. Reed. Properly." Carter's lips parted, but no words came out. His throat worked like swallowing glass. Pride fought inside him, pride lost. He stepped forward slowly, each movement heavy with regret. He forced himself to look Marcus directly in the eyes. "Mr. Reed." His voice cracked, and he had to clear his throat before continuing. "I was wrong. I treated you with disrespect and made assumptions without listening. I'm sorry." Marcus watched him closely. The apology was not smooth, not polished. It wasn't said with confidence. But it was real in the most important way. Because for the first time since the stop began, Carter was no longer performing for control. He was facing the truth. "You didn't respect me because you didn't think you had to," Marcus replied, voice calm but impenetrable. "If you hadn't run my ID, you would still think I was nobody. And that's exactly why we have problems like this." Torres nodded, ashamed for the man wearing his badge. Carter lowered his head. "You're right." It was barely more than a whisper. "There's no excuse." Marcus let silence sit long enough to ensure the apology stayed stamped into Carter's conscience. Then, he spoke with quiet authority. "Next time you pull someone over, remember this moment. Not because of who I am, but because you don't know who anyone is." Carter shut his eyes for a second, like the truth stung deeper than any reprimand. Torres exhaled slowly, stepping between them once more. "Mr. Reed, your patience tonight. I respect it deeply. We appreciate your restraint and professionalism." Professionalism. A word Carter had tried to deny him. Now, it was the only word that fit him. Marcus nodded once. That was enough. He turned to his car, opening the door with the confidence of someone who never needed permission to exist. Before getting in, he paused and looked back, not with anger, but with a reminder. "My job doesn't make me worthy of respect," he said. "My humanity does." Carter flinched again. The message hit harder than any disciplinary report. Marcus got in, the engine hummed to life, and as he signaled to merge back into traffic, every officer on that road stood still, watching, learning, quietly changed. Not because Marcus outranked them on paper, but because he just outranked them in character. He drove away without another word. He didn't need any. Marcus pulled away from the curb, the patrol cars shrinking in his rearview mirror until their flashing lights disappeared completely. The road ahead was smooth, peaceful, nothing like the storm that had just taken place behind him. He loosened his shoulders as he drove, finally letting go of the tension that had coiled in his muscles. The city skyline emerged in the distance, gleaming, steady, unbothered. His home, his workplace, the place where decisions far greater than traffic stops were made daily, and Marcus was one of the people who helped make them. He stopped at the next red light and exhaled slowly. His fingers tapped the steering wheel, not from nerves, but from clarity. He had handled the situation with more professionalism than the one wearing the badge. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He let the truth be loud on its own. His phone buzzed with a message from his supervisor. "Call me when you're safe, and thank you for representing us well." Marcus smiled lightly. He didn't do it for recognition. He did it because dignity matters more when someone tries to take it away. As the light turned green, he eased forward. A car pulled up beside him. A mother with her young son in the passenger seat. The boy waved shyly. Marcus nodded back with a friendly smile. That tiny moment reminded him why he worked in government in the first place. To create a world where that kid didn't grow up fearing authority meant judgment. He turned onto the avenue leading to the federal district. Security gates raised without question. Guards snapped to attention when they saw his credentials. Inside, colleagues greeted him by name. Here, he was respected. Here, he was someone whose work shaped policies, protected lives, and demanded intelligence. But as he took the elevator up to his office, Marcus understood the deeper truth. His job didn't make him valuable. His title didn't grant him worth. He had that before he ever earned a badge. The elevator doors opened, revealing the long, quiet hallway of the Homeland Security floor. Polished, professional, powerful. Marcus stepped inside confidently, knowing he belonged here. He sat at his desk, the same documents with national importance waiting for him. The same responsibility he carried every day. Yet something felt different now. Stronger. Because earlier, someone tried to look down on him from above. But they were never above him to begin with. He leaned back in his chair, took one calming breath, and allowed himself one final victorious thought. Power isn't measured by who barks orders louder. It's measured by who stands taller when someone tries to tear them down. Marcus Reed didn't have to prove he belonged in high government. He proved it every time he refused to let ignorance define him. And no flashing lights, no badge, no shouted assumptions could ever take that away.